Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jenna Brown.
I'm Kevin Tumlinson.
And this is JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So happy 4th of July, everyone. Except for Christine, because she's in Canada. It doesn't count.
4th of July.
Yeah, but I'm the only one with 4th of July plans.
Which is weird, right?
Michigan fans.
Yeah.
So.
Technically, you can still wish anybody a happy 4th of July. I mean,
I guess you could.
That
true.
day applies to everybody. So
It is 4th of July everywhere.
Can I wish them a happy 5th of July tomorrow?
Sure, why not? I'm just going to start randomly doing that.
That's how I'm going to start greeting everyone. Yeah, just
Yeah.
happy 8th of August. What?
What? And don't explain it. Just leave them wondering.
Right. Yeah. Is today a holiday? Every day is a holiday. It's all in your mind.
I was in the parade this morning with my daughter.
Oh.
Aww.
So our island is kind of a little tourist trap. You know, it's really like stepping back into the 50s. Like we've got a town hall with a gazebo in front with the police station next door. And it all looks like, 1955 up in here.
Oh, how cute.
The tourists come in, and every year for 4th of July, they have a parade through the main road of the island. So this year, my daughter wanted to be in it. She's not quite ready to ride her bike in it and like throw candy at the same time, like that whole multitasking thing. She's not there. So we opened the sunroof on my car and just kind of joined in with the antique cars and the other stuff. And she was loving it. Like she's hanging out the sunroof, like fistfuls of candy flying everywhere, hitting people in the head. And my wife bought like 2 bags of this stuff. And my daughter, like being the candy hound that she is, she's like, I'm going to throw about half of it. I'm going to put this candy off to the side so I can take it home with me. Like she divided it all up. And like, we were maybe a quarter of the mile down the road, and she's like digging into her stash. Like, I need more candy. We need more candy. Running out of candy. But yeah,
she discovered the joy
awesome.
of giving.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It ends at town hall, and then at town hall they've got there's like a barbecue, and there's a bandstand with the music playing, and there's a dunk tank, and just an all around good time.
And then Pennywise the clown showed up.
Pennywise. Can you clear up this confusion for me? This has been a lifelong confusion.
Sure.
Is it a gazebo or a belvedere? And what is the difference?
I have never heard of it called a belvedere before. Somebody referred to it as the bandstand today. Which I guess makes sense.
Bandstand. What is a belvedere?
I remember Mr. Belvedere.
A butler?
Yeah.
No, it's like a gazebo type structure, and I don't know what the difference is. Maybe a listener will tell us.
That's got to be a Canadian thing.
I'm going to look it up later.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, is that like a beanie and a toque?
That could be a Canadianism. I'll look that up too.
It might be. All right, so nothing exciting going on for the 4th with you guys, right? Sounds like everybody's just sitting home.
We are. My wife and I are watching the Game of Thrones, the new series. We're gonna catch up.
Are all the episodes out yet? I always wait.
Not all of them, but enough of them for us. I
Okay.
think there's like 3 out or something. We finished watching Dune last night, which was I'd never watched the original, and I haven't read the books. I'll be honest. But we watched the first film. We keep watching it in stages because my wife can only handle like a couple hours at a time. So we watched the second half of the second part.
There's something about that movie that puts me to sleep too. Like I can't watch the whole thing all at once. I had to do it in like 30-minute shifts. And I've seen the first one, I think 3 times I've tried to sit through the whole thing. And I've seen enough of it in pieces where I know the whole story at this point. To me, it feels like, it's obviously hugely expensive. I mean, they must have spent an insane amount of money on that. The story is okay. The books are fantastic. And it's just so difficult to capture that on screen. To me, it's one of those things that, like I would throw on the TV while I'm cleaning the house, like background. It's one of those shows you can just throw on and not really pay attention and jump into, which I don't know if
that's what the original movie was.
Yeah.
Like every weekend it'd be on somewhere, and I'd try to watch it, but I
liked them all.
And I was a fan of Patrick Stewart, so when I found out he was in it, I tried to watch it, but it was so cringy that I couldn't do it.
I don't even remember Patrick Stewart being in that. Like I remember Sting. I'm gonna have to rewatch that, but I liked the book and the first one and the second one. I liked them all. I saw The Bike Riders on Tuesday, which was
that good? I've been meaning to go see that.
Yeah, though it was with Austin Butler and Thomas Hardy.
Yeah.
And it was like about the the beginning of bike gangs in the 60s, I guess. So like the golden age of motorcycles.
Chicago, right?
Yeah, in Chicago, and how it transitioned. It was a lot of fun. I thought it got a little like thematically muddy towards the end, but also they're trying to match it with the real story. So, it's kind of hard to do that sometimes, but it was enjoyable. My husband dragged me. I'm like, I don't want to go see this movie, but I actually had a really good time watching it.
I keep hearing really good things about it. I hear two things. I hear it was really good, and then I hear it was not what I was expecting, because everybody kind of thought it was going to be like Sons of Anarchy or something.
I wasn't expecting anything, so I thought it was good. I was like, I didn't watch the trailer. I had no idea what it was about.
The team behind it did a movie with Matthew McConaughey years back called Mud. I don't know if it's the writer or the director of both of them. And that's a movie. It's very low budget, but like it's really well done, and it just sort of sticks with you. So I'm hoping that translates, but I want to see that. I'm watching Axel F, the new Beverly Hills Cop movie on Netflix. And I'm forcing myself to do it. I got to be honest with you. Like I turned it on because of the nostalgic factor. And they play on that, like immediately, like, the opening credits, it basically jumps back into, it's like it's 1984, like there's just almost like an audible click and everything, like music and everything, the editing, like everything is as if it's one of the original movies. I'm just having a hard time actually enjoying it, even seeing the original characters come back, and like now it's the same people, but they're all older, and it's just Eddie Murphy kind of looks the same, but not quite.
I feel like I have to watch it out of a duty to completion nostalgia kind of thing. Like
Axel F, I think, was one of the first songs I learned when I had to play piano.
First song every kid from our era.
Followed quickly by Final Countdown and.
Yes, it's an easy progression to go from one to the other. So,
all right, what is going on in the news?
Oh man, do we have a lineup? Second Circuit probes Internet Archive's arguments for controlled digital lending. That was almost like a tongue twister. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments in the Internet Archive's appeal regarding their practice of controlled digital lending, or CDL, which a lower court had found infringes copyright. The court appeared skeptical of the Internet Archive's arguments, emphasizing that simply converting a book to digital form doesn't make it transformative. The court questioned the Internet Archive's 5-year rule, which delays the lending of ebooks until 5 years post-publication, suggesting this indicates an acknowledgement of the value and market impact of digital copies. The court discussed the implications of CDL on the market for ebooks, noting the potential harm to sales if digital lending is allowed without proper licensing. This, by the way, comes at the same time. This story comes up at the same time as a post on Jane Friedman's blog about sort of the evolution. It includes sort of an evolution of copyright, how copyright came about for books. It's an interesting read if you get a chance to find it.
I am honestly surprised this is still in the court system, and like they're still going back. Like it seems so black and white, and I don't know if that's because I'm an author and I'm approaching it from that side. But even the 5-year thing, like that, they're treating that like this big aha moment. But like that's common sense, Like, I mean, even if they did this without knowledge, and I guess that's kind of how they're playing it. Like every argument I've seen is just, it's frustrating. Like these guys just need to go away.
Yeah. We've been following this for so long, right? I'm like, this is just ridiculous. You took a book and you put it in an ebook.
Yeah, I don't think the judges were really that impressed, but this is an appeal, right? So they're just going to take this to as many courts as they can until they run out of courts that they can legally take it to, I think.
Yeah.
Well, just if you look at the flip side, if they actually win on an argument like that, it opens the door to a floodgate of other problems, like an AI audio narrator, for instance, like all of a sudden that's fair game, and they might be able to do that across the board without getting in trouble. And there's probably a dozen other examples just like that, and other things that we haven't thought of yet that are going to come around in the next couple of years. And I can't see a judge just opening that door, for any reason other than, like I said, common sense prevails, I think, on something like this. It should be happening to begin with. These people should be in jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Next up, the Wall Street Journal drops its bestseller list. The Wall Street Journal has stopped running its weekly bestseller list. The paper ran a total of 6 fiction and nonfiction lists, as well as a hardcover business list. All were powered by Circana Bookscan. The company's contract with Circana expired, and they are not renewing it. The demise of the book list, man. I mean, that's starting to kind of happen all over, and I don't know where the future is going to take us on that.
Honestly, I mean, now I've got access to Circana, to BookScan. I can see my numbers in real time, and I know what's being bought. I know what's being sold, and they are very far off on their tracking. Like, it is not accurate, and they're only counting certain stores. They're only like, I don't say you could base any bestseller list on that. I mean, if the feedback's not, this is the 21st century. It's not hard to track data. Every word you say is literally being recorded and fed into a database and used against you. Like, they should be able to do this in a better scale. I think Wall Street Journal and these other guys, there's an expense issue too. I mean, they're taking this data, now they've got to pay somebody to put the list together and this and that. And, it's repetitive to other lists.
Right. And what's the ROI for them on that? Like, what is it that they get out of that?
There's not, like, it's always watched for them. They're a financial publication, right? So, like, if you're a fiction author, it's fantastic to be able to say you made the Wall Street Journal list, but at the same time, it really doesn't seem relevant to you as a fiction author. So I think they've struggled with that too.
Wall Street Journal is a lot of business and nonfiction, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's that whole world. It doesn't fit, quite as well as some of the other ones do, I guess.
This is where I think someone could come along who has a sort of vested interest in book sales, like maybe a certain digital book distribution company that won't be named, but they could actually pay to put their own lists into the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal would be incentivized to run it, and it would theoretically have an ROI for that company, because they would, I would link to the books where, that benefit me. So
I mean, it would have to be an objective third party that does it, though, right? Because even if, a lot of people will say, well, Amazon's got to be accurate because, they're tracking that data in real time. But if you look at their bestseller list, the top titles are always Amazon titles, or the titles that are in Kindle Unlimited. But for the most part, they're Amazon imprints at the top. And, that may very well be true. That might be their best sellers. But at the same time, they're pushing those same books on through their algorithms in front of an audience. They're creating that, environment.
Well, it only has to be objective, though. If it only has to be unbiased if you're not the one paying for it. I mean, if I've branded my list and I'm paying Wall Street Journal and New York Times, et cetera, to put that list in that, they're making money off of me. So yeah, I'm going to push my own agenda there.
Maybe that's what we need to do. We need Kevin's bestseller list.
That's what we need.
Kevin's bestseller list.
My friend, if I could scrape up the, I'm sure $100,000 or so it would take to do it, I would totally put a list in the. These are the top Kevin Tumlinson bestsellers that you need to buy right now.
I'd throw a Hail Mary right now and reach out to Wall Street Journal. They've got 3 empty pages now that they need to fill.
Sounds like we've got a plan brewing. I think there's some opportunity. But someone could come along, form a third party, pay to put a list in. The third party goes to all the various distribution outlets and ask them to contribute to the list. They could do that, and then it could be an unbiased list. But I would say that, like, the method that's used now, like the New York Times list, it's gameable because you can, the way it's been gamed all along, I think. But that whole notion of, like, they're only gathering data from certain stores, etc. Like, that's not really representative of what's doing well with readers, especially when you've got, like, Amazon's got its list effectively. All the retailers have something like that. But what's really needed is, Amazon's never going to share data straight up, but I mean, they don't really have to share much. They already share the data that you need most. So what's really going to take is, somebody who takes on the onus of aggregating all that and producing that list, and then potentially having to pay to place it.
Frankly, who should do it is Barnes and Noble, because they're an objective third party in it. They don't have their own imprint. They're tracking all of those sales, and even as an indie author, you can get through their door. You can get on, in their system. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, Amazon would have to strip away every one of its imprints and just look strictly at sales data without influence in any way for that to be relevant. But Barnes and Noble could probably do it.
The real question, by the way, is why doesn't the Washington Post have a list? Because Bezos owns that, right? So why isn't there an Amazon themed list? I think somebody's missing out on something.
You should write them a letter, Kevin.
A strongly worded letter to Jeff Bezos, one of many. All right, let's move on. So, speaking of Amazon, a Kindle Vella contest, the Vellies. This makes me want to literally stab myself in the brain. So here's a contest Amazon didn't really advertise for new Kindle Vella serials. You must be a U.S. resident. It must be a new Kindle Vella serial published in English, consisting of at least 10,000 words and 10 episodes between June 25th, 2024 and August 20th, 2024. Prizes. Episodic Excellence Award is 25 grand. Newcomer Author Award is 15 grand. Silver Scribe Award is $10,000 each, and Notable Narratives Award is $1,000 each. And then the total prize pool is $62,000. Stories will be judged on originality, creativity, content quality, and reader engagement. Semifinalists will be selected based on reader engagement, and winners will be determined by a panel of judges. The Vellies.
I have thoughts on
this. We have one Vella author on the panel.
Yeah, I write Vellas. I write two of them. One that's we've kind of wrapped up, and two that are the second one's kind of we're slowly chugging along. So I get emails about all stuff Vella from them, including like bonuses. I did not get this email. This came through. They didn't send this out, so like no Vella authors got this. This came from like my friend networks, just being like, "Hey, did you see this?" So I don't know where they advertise this, but if you wanted to write a serial, now might be the time to start. I thought about it for a minute, but I don't have it in me to start a new serial. So,
yeah.
And it's reader engagement. So if you're not writing romance or paranormal romance, it might be a hard time.
Are you eligible right now with the ones that you've already worked on?
No, they have to be brand new ones started between June 25th and August 20th.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And you got, 10,000 words. So I was like, man, but I know that some people out there will kill it. So I just got to get the word out there.
I'm one of those that didn't pay any attention at all to Vella because it just didn't appeal to me. So maybe I need to look closer at this though. Cause like they're asking for something that needs to be at least 10,000 words long. Like only 10,000 words long is all their.
Yeah. So your episodes can be between 600 and I think it's up to 5,000 words, but they pay you per episode. So why would you write 5,000 words? So most people write, 1,000 to 2,000 words an episode. And the first 10 are free. And then after that, it's paywall. Then they have to pay per episode. It used to be the first 3 were free. Now the first 10 are free. We get reimbursed for that somehow in the algorithm that Amazon doesn't really explain to us. But I don't know. I get money that shows up. So it's fine. So, and it's based on, to get to the semifinal, you have to have reader engagement. So those would be things like people are reading episodes, people are liking them or leaving comments, favoriting your story. And then once you get to the semifinals, they're going to judge what they think is the best story based on creativity, content, and all of that. I'm tempted a little bit, but man, serials are a lot of work.
This whole thing sounds like a lot of work.
And you got to keep going.
It does sound like a lot of work, especially since they're giving away 10 episodes for free. So and that's their minimum to be in the contest.
Which is probably not an accident, right? Like they're
10,000 words free.
Yeah, well, they're trying to flood their system with new serials that qualify, that hit that 10 thing. But I mean, based on what you just said, I mean, this goes well beyond just writing the serial. Like you've got to engage with these readers, you've got to spend time on it. This is like cultivating a Facebook account. This is why I stay away from social media, because it's such a huge time suck. So I'm guessing, like you as the author, are you reading comments and then you're liking comments and you're responding to comments?
You're liking them, and they're really annoying because Amazon doesn't tell you when you have new comments. Like you think they could email you that. So you have to like look and scroll through every day if you want to respond to your comments. I've kind of stopped bothering. I'll go in there maybe once a week and look and comment. So it's a little bit annoying, but I know there are lots of people out there who can write serials quickly. I know lots of these fabulous people who are writing. So I just wanted them to know there's a contest.
Yeah.
You have a serial in your heart and you want to do it. Now is the time.
It's not writing the serial that would keep me from participating in this. It's that whole interactive piece where I got to go and
Well, you don't have to. So, the reader engagement is they're reading the episodes, they're thumbs upping your episodes, they're favoriting your episode, they're leaving a comment. You probably would get some more engagement if you were responsive, but It's not a requirement.
What you got to do, since they give away 10 episodes free, is on that 10th episode, you got to have one hell of a cliffhanger. Like get them really revved up.
Well, I mean, that's every episode, right? Because you've got to click that next button. So pretty much every episode has to be a cliffhanger. That's kind of the serial format.
This sounds like a huge pain in the ass. So I'm not.
I've already moved on.
Yeah,
not going to happen.
Speaking of moving on and Kindle, TikTok lifts Kindle sales too. Kindle sales have grown by double-digit percentages over the past 2 years, and similar growth expected this year. Approximately 60% of this growth comes from new Kindle users. TikTok readers, particularly Kindle girlies, in quotes, are driving this increase in sales. The rise in Kindle sales has also boosted the demand for related accessories like page turners, stands, and remotes. What's a page turner? What do they mean by that? What is that?
There's a thing like one of my friends has one of these. I've seen it. So if you're like lying on your couch, it's some kind like it turns the page for you so you don't have to move.
On your Kindle?
I forget exactly how it. Yeah. So she has it. So it's like it holds it over her couch for her, and she has like a little click, and it just turns it. And she doesn't have to move.
I weep.
Shout out to you, Chris. You know
society.
You have this.
I weep for
wow.
But she's like comfortable and in her blanket. She doesn't want to turn her page.
You don't have to take your hands out of the potato chip bag or whatever it is.
Yeah, man.
I mean, if you're reading your Kindle, isn't it just like a thumb tap? I mean, it's
it is.
It's so freaking
But if
easy.
you have a stand, okay, you're comfortable in your bed or on your couch. You're propped up. You're cocooned in your blanket. You've got it on a stand so you can see it, and then you just got like a little clicker. It'll turn your pages. You don't have to move.
I have never felt more get off my lawn than I feel right this second.
But I thought this was pretty surprising, right? Like
this surprised me only because I've got access to the data for Best of Book Talk. So we send out hundreds of ARCs every week from that site, and the bulk of our requests are for physical copies. And this could be because the influencers that request them want to use it as a prop in their video. They want to hold it up. They want to put candles around it.
Yeah.
They dress it up. So I mean, reading this, what it makes me think is that the people on the flip side of that, the ones who are watching those influencers are running out and getting the Kindle copy, which does make sense. I know a ton of them are in Kindle Unlimited because we see that traffic too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's all the news that's fit to page turn.
Awesome.
When you're writing a book, the first draft is the easy part. It's what comes after that hurts. The confusion, the self-doubt, questioning this, questioning that, trying to get feedback so you can feel confident making changes. It's a lot to handle. And that's why I'm delighted to say that this episode of the Writers Inc. podcast is sponsored by AutoCrit. One of the most value-packed memberships for any author, AutoCrit brings you an amazing suite of tools that can make it a breeze to plan, write, and edit your books all in one place. From start to finish, everything you need to produce a strong, confident story is at your fingertips. Get instant developmental feedback on plot, conflict, characters, themes, and more through the Story Analyzer. And edit each sentence to perfection with a complete interactive editing suite packed with reports and insights. And that's not to mention additional benefits like private community forums and live members-only support, and writing sessions every single week. It's an incredible place to be for any writer. And listeners of the Writers Inc. podcast can take advantage of lifetime AutoCrit Pro membership for one single payment. That's right, no renewal fees. Head to autocrit.com/JD to get yourself a lifetime membership now. Big thanks to AutoCrit for sponsoring the show.
So, JD, who is up this week?
This week we've got Kelsea Yu. Kelsea is a Shirley Jackson Award nominee and the author of dozens of short stories that have appeared in magazines such as Clarkesworld, Nightmare, and Fantasy. Her latest novel is called It's Only a Game, a twisty, fast-paced young adult thriller releasing July 9th. Here she is, Kelsea Yu.
So you just have your YA debut coming out, a thriller. It's Only a Game. And one of the ways your premise is the game in question is a video game, which I thought was a really inventive way to approach I mean, not just the subject, but the plot in general. So, how did you come up with the idea for the story?
Hey, yeah. So the idea for the story, actually, I should back up and say that I played a lot of video games when I was growing up. I played games with my brothers, and then in college I played a lot of World of Warcraft. And
Nice.
so, and I had a lot of friends that I made through gaming. So I always wanted to write a story about a Chinese American gamer girl because I never got to see those stories growing up, and I always thought that would be so cool
Yeah.
for my younger self to have seen that. So that's something that I kind of had in mind already. I did for a while have somewhere in the back of my mind like, oh, it'd be so cool to write this kind of story. And then one day, I'm honestly not sure where this specific concept came from, but you know how sometimes ideas just fall into your lap. I thought, okay, what if one day a gamer girl was playing a video game and saw someone die in the video game, and then the next day, like she witnessed the murder in real life. And from there, the idea just kind of took off.
Yeah, I can see how that would be like, that's a great idea. I mean, if that falls into your lap, writers out there, take note. Definitely
Thank
grab
you.
onto it.
Once in a while, it happens.
Yeah, I really liked how you wove the technology, but also the reality. So, it was sort of like one reflected the other. Was it tricky balancing that narrative, like to keep the tension and to sort of make sure that the video game didn't just become a trope that you used?
Yeah, that's actually something I thought a lot about. When I was developing the story, I of course went and tried to find books that had video games in them, and there's some really cool books out there. I also noticed that pretty much all of them featured virtual reality games, and that makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're physically, your body is there. A lot of times they'll have something where it's like something happens in the game, there, it happens to your body in real life, or something where that consequence is just a little more obvious or directly connected. But my experience with gaming is I never played virtual reality games. They always, they feel a little more futuristic or kind of sci-fi. I wanted something that felt more grounded in the contemporary space, like modern day, and my own experiences playing games. And so I really, really wanted to write something that wasn't virtual reality, that you do play on a computer. But of course, it's hard to make that have like a kind of tense feeling or real consequences. So that's when I started weaving in like, okay, there's going to be real life consequences for them. If they don't beat this level, something genuinely very bad will happen to them or their loved ones. And I feel like that helped kind of bring a lot of tension to the story, and definitely something that I worked on.
Yes, well, I can say, yeah, that ending, I was holding, I had to release a breath I didn't know I was holding.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. Another thing that you did, not just weaving the technology with the, reality of Marina's world, was you used dual timelines, which I always feel is so tricky because, how do you know what information to reveal when? And, you want to give some clues and context without giving the whole thing away and how they intertwine. So I wondered if you could talk about how you did that.
Definitely. So, funny thing about the dual timeline in this story, this book went through several drafts and rewrites, etc. It's been through many versions, but originally it was a single timeline story with the, contemporary, just what's happening now. But I felt like as I was writing it, there were certain key scenes in Marina's past that just felt like they really needed to be on the page. Felt very important to understanding her and her story. And, her past is so interwoven with what's happening in the present that I just felt like not having that timeline wouldn't be quite enough. So I added, I think, about 5 or 6 flashbacks initially that were sort of sprinkled throughout the story. And that's actually how it was when we went on submission, which is when my agent sent the book out to editors to see if anyone was interested. And it was my editor who suggested that we expand the 5 or 6 flashbacks into an entire separate storyline, which, was a daunting task, but I actually feel really good about how it turned out. The way we kind of balanced it so that that wouldn't take over the narrative was to have those flashbacks be really short, more like vignettes, just a glimpse into different points in her life. And I feel like that really helped flesh out her background and show like why she is who she is now, and give us a lot of context for her story. So I really liked, how it ended up.
Yeah, I think it worked actually really effectively. You just have like these flashes and they created so much mystery, of like what was happening and what was going on. Did you ever worry about Marina's story veering a bit too dark for a young adult reader? Because there are some spots that get a little dark.
Yes, that's something that was very much on my mind at various points. I guess where I landed is I do feel like kids and teens can handle a lot in fiction, like a lot more than sometimes, adults give them credit for.
Yeah.
I think like, and also, teens also go through really rough things and dark things. And I feel like reflecting some of those on the page feels important to me. And another thing that I've really found, I have a preteen stepson, and of course, just talking to friends who are authors, librarians, parents, teachers, is that a lot of, kids and teenagers will kind of regulate what they're consuming. And if I feel like for a lot of people, if they find that it's too dark, they'll just set it down. Especially kids, like, don't tend to have those qualms that adults sometimes have about like wanting to finish a book they started, or like certain rules for themselves. They're just like, oh, this is not vibing for me, I'm just going to put it down. So I trust that kids know themselves and their own limits, and that if it's too dark for them or they're not in the space for it, then they can just set it down. And I think that's great. And another thing too, I do think about, being a horror writer and a thriller writer and just tending to write dark things, is I think those pieces of dark fiction can give us like a safe way to explore darkness and big emotions. I know as a teenager, I had very big emotions.
Yes.
And sometimes like having something that's very dramatic or almost exaggerated felt more on par with how I actually felt like day to day as a teen. And so I think that also that's one thing that I really like about like young adult thrillers and horror and kind of darker fiction is it gives you a chance to explore that in a way that's safe, because you're just sitting in a room reading. So you're not actually in danger, but you can sort of experience a little bit of that and like maybe have catharsis too.
Yeah, and I do think it does get a little dark, but I do think that you did a really nice job balancing, the hope and the optimism, and it wasn't frivolous, I suppose is the right
Thank
word.
you. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's really important to me.
I also really liked the idea, and I think particularly when it comes to thinking about, kids and teens and the world that we live in and will be living in, was how you used technology, not just the video game, but sort of she was able to build her anonymity because of her access to this video game. And I really liked that you used it as both her strength and a weakness. She could build a new life, but that anonymity was also put her at risk. What do you think about how kids and parents can protect themselves in this world?
I feel like technology has made that so complicated now. It's like, you know, on the one hand, like sometimes it's a very good thing. We can track and we can, you know, it's not so easy for people a lot of times just to like do something terrible and then disappear.
Right.
And at the same time, you know, sometimes there's very good reasons people don't want to be found, and it makes this harder. It is a very complicated question, and I'm not sure that I don't think there is a simple answer, and I'm not sure I have an obvious answer. But as a parent, I have, you know, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and it's something that my husband and I have definitely talked about, like how fast our technology is changing, social media, and like just all sorts of, you know, those topics.
Yeah.
And what we want to do for our kids. And I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation because, again, it's all changing so fast. Like, we can't really predict everything that will be an issue when they're teenagers, or, you know, later on. And but one thing that we do is that we don't put their faces or their names anywhere online. And to me, that's really important because I feel like they should have a chance to be able to make their own choice in how they want to be presented or not presented online at some future point when they are old enough to actually make that decision. So I think like that's one small thing that we do, but it's definitely something that, you know, I continue to think about. And I don't know, I guess we'll just continue to gauge and see.
Yeah, it just feels like it's such a ripe subject. I mean, for both horror
Yeah.
and thrillers, like because
Yeah.
there's so much that can go wrong. And I really liked that, you know, Marina wasn't necessarily pretending to be someone else for nefarious reasons, which is something you see a lot, right, in the
Hmm.
thriller space.
Yeah.
But still, you know, how she, you know, interacted online definitely had real world consequences. And I thought that was just such a really interesting way that you presented it because it felt so real, like that could happen.
Well, thank you.
So, speaking of video games, your love of gaming bled through the pages. And as you mentioned, you gamed yourself. Do you have a favorite game from your childhood or one that you're obsessed with right now?
There's so many I could name from childhood. My brothers and I played a lot of different games, a lot of console games at the time, like Super Smash Brothers and Donkey Kong, and you know, I played a lot of those. And of course, for me, I think the game that I played the most was World of Warcraft. It's it ended up being a big part of my life because, you know, my best friend in college and I played together a lot, and I met people through the game. So, you know, the gaming and friendship thing, that's a huge, like, for me, that's a very important kind of memory or feeling that I wanted to capture. Nowadays, unfortunately, I haven't really had time for games for a while. Maybe when the kids are a little older and are in school full time, that might change. But at the moment, I feel like pretty much all of my time is just taken up by like kids or family stuff and writing, and there's not a whole lot left after that.
Do your kids play any video games? Do you let them enter the
They do. Well, the
world
5-year-old
gaming?
and my 13 or 12-year-old, he's almost 13, stepson, they both play a lot of games. They just love it. And they play a lot of games with my husband. That's something that they enjoy doing together.
That's so sweet. Little
Yeah.
video game family. What do you hope your readers take away from your novel?
It's kind of funny to say this because it is a thriller. So, you know, it's like a murder mystery, it's a thriller. So, you know, usually you think like, oh, just fun, fast-paced story. But to me, the heart of the story is Marina learning to trust in many different ways. I won't say too much more because I don't want to spoil anything, but
Right.
that I would just love for that to be something that's meaningful to readers. Is just like her own story and like how she learns to trust herself, how she learns to trust people around her that have earned that trust.
I think that's like such a, a good lesson actually to learn, because trust, and especially when you're an adolescent and like, everything is changing and you're sort of just living this turbulent emotional world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and with social media and sort of like, even as technology progresses, like there's sort of like a sense of like you don't even know if you're going to be able to trust what you hear or see sometimes.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, and I think also just learning to trust the people who have shown that they have your best interest in mind. I think that's just really key to the story for me.
Yeah, and how to sort of parcel that out.
Yeah.
Finding that was one thing I really liked about Marina's story, that it was about like the trust and the found family, but also that she learned to trust herself, I think was
Hmm.
like and I know that you used one element of the story, and again, I won't get into it for spoilers, that had my heart racing at the end to make sure that
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
they were okay. I know
Yep.
listeners are like, what is it? You're gonna have to read the book to find out. But that, she finally trusted, who she was. I feel like
Yes.
that was a really big part of the story, at least that when I was reading it, that I really liked. Because that's not always so easy.
It's not. It's really not easy, especially as a teenager.
Right, I
It's
know.
not
I mean, it's
easy.
sometimes hard as an adult, what do I stand
Yeah,
for? What do I believe in? What are my boundaries? Where
right.
will what will I agree to? What won't I? So I really appreciated that you kind of had those elements woven in
Thank you.
the story. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to aspiring writers?
This is something that I had to really internalize, but my advice is that, like, not to worry about wasting your writing. Like, none of your time that you spend writing is wasted. It doesn't matter, even if that piece never goes to anyone, even if you never show anybody, even if you delete it, even if you try to publish it and it doesn't get published, I feel like it's not a waste because, you tried something as a writer, either it helped you grow in some way, learn something, experiment. I think that to me was such an important lesson to learn. Like the first few manuscripts that I wrote, I didn't finish every single one, but like the first few books I worked on, I put a lot into it. I tried really hard on the world building and, you know, coming up with those stories. I tried all sorts of things and I never did anything with them. I didn't show them to anyone. I didn't even query them, but I feel like they were still, they were me learning to write. They were still really useful and I don't regret writing a single word of those. And the
Hmm.
same with It's Only a Game. I rewrote that book twice. Now, the first version was not a full manuscript, it was a partial draft, but I scrapped it and started over. And then I wrote that book, edited, queried that book, got agent feedback, and then decided to rewrite the whole book from scratch. And I don't regret writing those first two versions. I feel like they were necessary, even though no one will ever, no one will be able to buy and like read those versions on a shelf or anything. Like, I still feel like it was really valuable for me to write all those different versions to try to find the right version. I also have short stories that I've written and trunked, and I'm okay with it. So that's my advice is just not to worry about like being too precious about every single word or thinking like, okay, every single thing I ever write has to be published or be like visible in some way. Like it's okay to cut stuff or throw stuff out or just, you know, try things.
Yeah, I think that is a really important lesson as a writer, like because you do kind of feel like, oh, I wasted all this time. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a sense of that, and not like you said, you're learning and you're sort of experimenting, and you never know when it's going to pop up again. Do you think you'll ever take a look at those old ideas and maybe bubble them into something new that you'd work on again?
I think sometimes little bits and pieces of those old ideas kind of just come around naturally. I don't plan to do anything with those old books because, in part, I was learning how to build a premise, and I don't think any of those premises are things that I think are fantastic. Like, the writing was just okay, the premise was just okay because I hadn't figured out how to properly build a story or tell a story the way I wanted to tell it. And so I don't think they'll come back in, any kind of recognizable format, but I wouldn't be surprised if little bits and pieces showed up at some point elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess
Just kind of subconsciously,
Yeah, you never know where it was a good idea in some form at some time, so
Right.
it might show up again. I love that. I think that's great advice. All right. So yeah, where can readers find you and your book? I think I saw you have signed copies available.
Yes. So the easiest place to find everything that I write and all the updates is my website, www.kelseayu.com, just spelled KELSEAYU.com. And I update it fairly regularly. I keep it, pretty pretty current. So that's a good spot. My social media also, I'd say I'm on Instagram the most out of all platforms at A Novel Escape, and same handle on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now.
We don't know anymore.
Yes, and I do have an author event on July 10th at Powell's Books. So up through then, you can order signed copies of my book directly from Powell's website. After that, I'm not sure yet. I'll have to see if, they want to do an ongoing signing thing or anything like that. But again, I will just, have all that info on my website and social media. So you can always check there for updates.
That is so awesome. And do you have any other books that once they read this and devour it entirely, that they can look forward to? Anything you can tell us?
So I do have an adult horror novella that's already published, Bound Feet. So that one is available on Amazon or elsewhere. Again, check my website. And I have another adult horror novella that will be coming out fall of 2025 called Demon Song. That's going to be published with Titan Books. So information on that will be available a little bit closer to then. And other than that, I have a bunch of short stories and some essays. Links to all of those are on my website as well.
So exciting. Well, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, so have you guys ever, used something where it's like a hobby that you've written, not just as a trope into your book, but like something that was an integral part of the plot, like She Used the Video Game?
I'm thinking.
A hobby. Specifically a hobby?
Well,
my only hobby is writing.
Yeah, I know.
All
my hobbies turn into careers.
That's a whole different conversation. Yeah. I think we should have.
I think I mostly use it. I don't know that I've made it integral. I think I mostly use it as trope. Like, I love heavy metal, so I usually stick that in some books. But it's not like a heavy metal book, though.
Right. Oh, but that would be kind of interesting. Maybe we should think about that.
My interests and my hobbies kind of revolve. Like, I do a lot of reading, and studying and watching videos about like alternative history and quantum physics and things like that. So that stuff ends up in the books a lot. But
yeah.
That's kind of the point of the books, though.
I think it's kind of natural to do that, though. I mean, I guess I was just thinking, video games. I don't know why we don't see, they're there, the books are there, but sometimes they're not necessarily like outside of Ready Player One. Sometimes they're just kind of there as like, the gamer girl, but are they trapped in a game? Sci-fi uses that a lot, but this wasn't a sci-fi book. This was just a straight thriller, which I thought she handled that like really well to hit both
cozy mysteries use things like cooking and reading and crochet and all kinds of things. So,
well, lit RPG is a whole genre.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like of people, things are happening in video games. Honestly, I don't know a lot about it because probably the only thing that I've read that would classify as lit RPG is Ready Player One. But I know that's out there. I know it's huge in cereals on Royal Road.
Did Ready Player One start all that?
RPG.
Did it start all of that? Was that the first one?
I think there was some stuff around before it too. I think it's just the one that blew up.
Was Tron? I don't know if Tron was a book though, or if that was just a movie. Was Tron a book?
I don't know, but Tron was fun.
Yes, but after the fact. Tron had like books and comics and stuff after the movie. So I don't think it was based on anything, but you know, I've been wrong about a lot of stuff in my life.
Sure. Now I got to go back and look. You need the Wayback Machine for Tron.
So, you know, this book, even though it's a thriller, was YA, and I was a little surprised. You know, it got fairly dark in some places. What do you guys think? You know, of that? What is too dark for what? When does YA get to be too much into the adult?
When it's Deliverance meets what was it? The Road.
The Road.
That's when it would get too dark. That's a callback to last week, everybody.
Yeah.
So listen to last week's show.
That would be a pretty intense plot. I really liked how she said that she just trusts teens. To know their limits.
So I will admit that I have this tendency now to think of like, why would you want to gear a book like that towards a YA audience? But when I was the YA audience, man, I was reading
love the dark stuff.
I was reading a ton of stuff. So, and you know, I was going to say Stephen King was like, that wasn't even the darkest of the things that I read.
Yeah. I read some pretty dark stuff as a teen. And, you know, I like how she said that too. I'm returning to be a teen. Because as a teen, I would chuck a book in a minute. And then how does this thing happen to you where you're like, I must finish a book.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I've got to give it 100 pages. Now I'll chuck a book again. I think I'm returning to being a child again. I don't know how that happens.
Well, yeah, I guess that is kind of, kids know what they like, interestingly. And then at some point, you know, we become an adult and sort of like get guided into.
You get told that everything you like is wrong when you're an adult. So you question everything. That's what happens. All the stuff you like is bad or childish.
I had a certain period in there where people were giving me books that were recommended to me, and I was told you absolutely have to read this because of this, this, and this. And I would force myself to get all the way to the end. And like I just didn't get it. And like that happened just one too many times. And then I was right back there with, you know, like life is just too short for a bad book. So I don't care. My wife will, as far as I know, she finishes everything that she picks up. But she diligently researches each book before she actually opens that cover. Whereas I've got, there's probably 30 or 40 books on my to be read pile right now. Like I will just go and grab the next one in line. In the order that I received them and, you know, give it 10, 20 pages. And if it doesn't hook me, it's gone and I move on to the next one.
Yeah. I used to be the guy who I had to finish it all, but I will say in the past, I'd say maybe even just the past like 3 years, I've gotten to a point where if I've lost interest, I'm not fighting through it anymore. Like I'm not
right.
You have to be the one to fight to keep me, not the other way around. I'm not doing it for the author anymore.
Yeah. But like you, JD, people would recommend books and then you feel like you had to finish them. But that was kind of interesting for me too. Like people will recommend like, this is the book of my heart and I don't get it and I'll do the same and people don't like it.
Yeah.
So I like, the book of your heart is not going to be the book of someone else's heart and that's fine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just get over it.
Yeah. I think teens are probably pretty good at that. But I also wondered too, if they just, just listen. She talked about like letting them explore like big feelings. So I guess if you have sort of like more exaggerated feelings, I don't want to say exaggerated, I guess more amplified feelings as a teenager, you probably are more aware of like how things are making you react maybe. So that might be another reason.
And then when you get into like your 30s and 40s, you're like, feelings. Nobody needs feelings.
I had those removed years ago.
Yeah. Once I got the metallic heart put in my chest, I no longer worry about feelings.
Yeah, when she was talking about that, it reminded me of old school fairy tales, right? Because very, very dark.
Yeah.
But a
Right.
safe way to explore fear and big emotions. And I think that's really important for, what do they call it? Middle grade and YA literature is for kids to be able to explore those things safely.
Yeah.
Well, and to think about, I thought she did a really good job with balancing, like, this is something that you love, especially video games, right? Like kids, they're all on video games or they're on social media. They're immersed in technology. And so by using that as sort of like the not the villain, but the method that the villain uses, it's a strength and a vulnerability. And I thought that was a good way. Like if I were a teenager, I was like, that would probably make me think about things a little bit more. Like, what do those things mean? And how do you handle that? And then as a parent, it also makes you think, like, how do you protect your kids against that?
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents think that the fact that the book is a young adult book, that protects them. You know what I mean? Like they see it almost like a rating on a movie. Like that's a PG movie. It's a PG book.
Yeah.
My kid can read that. And like I have been very surprised at some of the stuff that I found in young adult books, whether it's graphic violence or sex or this or that, things that you would never suspect would actually be in there are not only in there, but in far more detail than you'd see in some adult novels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can see both sides of that, though, because I will tell you, I was reading some extraordinarily inappropriate books as a teenager. Books that, as a parent and adult now, I'm thinking like, man,
yeah,
who let me read those books? And not just, the dark stuff. I mean, I remember reading like adult romance novels that like no 13-year-old had any business reading.
Yeah.
And, but I guess the argument that I've heard a lot of YA authors is, kids are thinking about those things and they're talking about them and they're going to seek that out. And so I suppose rather than having 13-year-old Jenna in the adult section of the library, maybe it's better that 13-year-old Jenna is at least in an age appropriate where the author is hopefully handling that subject.
Yeah. Better to learn it in a book, a pot boiler, than on the street, I guess. So
I think that should be your new email.
That's
signature.
There's going to be a T-shirt. Stay tuned for the Kevin Thomason T-shirt shop.
Advice from Uncle Kevin.
Better to learn it from a pot boiler novel.
Kevin Tees. That's going to be the new shop.
All right. Awesome. Well, that's a great note to go out on. JD, who is up next week?
Next week, we've got Peter James. He's the UK #1 best-selling author of dozens of thrillers. His latest novel is called They Thought I Was Dead, the 20th book in his Roy Gray series, and it releases, I believe, July 2nd. The guy has had 19 number one bestsellers, so you definitely don't want to miss this one. Peter James.
Fantastic. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.